Good evening. Let's move on to the summary and analysis of Mac Flecnoe, the satirical poem by John Dryden. Its political context is given in the shorts and its link is given in the description box. Please go through that. Mac Flecnoe is a satirical poem where John Dryden ridicules Thomas Shadwell, a playwright, by depicting him as the inheritor of the throne of dullness. Here we can see Dryden critiques Thomas Shadwell's writing style as well as personality in his work Mac Flecnoe. So please go through the political context and the link is given in the description box. We can see the theme of Mac Flecnoe goes like this. It depicts the choice of Shadwell by Flecnoe as his successor to the kingdom of nonsense and dullness. And the opening line of Dryden's Mac Flecnoe goes like this: all human things are subject to decay, and when fate summons, monarchs must obey. I repeat, all human things are subject to decay, and when fate summons, monarchs must obey. One of the classical opening lines. Now let's see which are the major events depicted in Dryden's Mac Flecnoe. So the opening lines itself is written in the grand style of epics. All are subjected to time and decay, and everyone must summon when fate calls. First point is first major event in Mac Flecnoe is Flecnoe's decision. Flecnoe Kingdom, a ruler of the kingdom of nonsense, had decided to name to select a successor to his kingdom of dullness, to his kingdom of nonsense. So Flecnoe had decided to find out a heir for his kingdom. What was the name of the kingdom? It was the kingdom of nonsense. And next you can see selection of Shadwell. Flecnoe had selected Shadwell after considering various candidates as his successor. Do you know what was the reason behind that? Because Flecnoe know that Shadwell was the dullest among his sons. Because nature supports the beliefs that only he should rule who must closely resemble Shadwell. And Shadwell had never deviated from the path of logic. When you consider other sons of Flecnoe, they had at least a little amount of common sense with them. But Shadwell was not like that. He was the dullest among his sons. That's why Flecnoe decided to choose Shadwell as his successor. Now you can see Flecnoe delivers a speech praising Shadwell's mediocrity and lack of talent, declaring him worthy of inheriting the throne of nonsense. And Dryden accuses two important writers of English in his Mac Flecnoe. They were John Haywood and James Shirley. Dryden thinks that their writings are equally poor and illogical, like that of Shadwell. And Shadwell compares, or Dryden criticizes the musical quality of Shadwell's writings like this. Shadwell's father Flecnoe had entertained King of Portugal with flute music. Similarly, Shadwell entertained English monarch with music of his orchestra while sailing on a boat on the Thames. Dryden compares this incident with ancient musician Aaron, whose music had attracted dolphins. But Shadwell, on the other hand, could attract only small fishes, he says. There is also a reference to popish plot in Dryden's Mac Flecnoe. What was popish plot? Popish plot was a plan of Jesuits for the assassination of Charles II, but later it is proved that this was only a false. This popish plot was um, proved to be false. So we can make another class on popish plot. There is also a reference to Barbican. Barbican was a London based um, center. And what happened to Barbicans now? Former glory of Barbican had gone. Now it has turned into brothel for polluted pleasures. Only inhabitants of this place were old walls disturbed by some watchmen. The theatre house, there you can see a theatre house near Barbican, and were training for girls and boys to play the roles of heroes and queens were given in this theatre house. And Dryden says that tragic plays of John Fletcher were often performed there, but brilliant comedies of Ben Jonson's were not performed. What is the reason for the rejection of brilliant plays in this theatre? In Flecnoe, Dryden says that this is because the mind of the audience are dull enough to enjoy such brilliant plays. Now, an arrival of mighty prince is also anticipated here, and this prince will rule the heap of ruins, and who would be an enemy of wit and intelligence. There is a reference to Thomas Dekker also in this poem, where Dryden says that Thomas Dekker predicted that a mighty prince who would rule this heap of ruins, who would be the enemy of wit and intelligence. Now you can see another major event, that is the coronation of Shadwell. So Shadwell is canonically or symbolically crowned as the new king of nonsense, inheriting Flecnoe's position. We can see which are the major events revolving this coronation ceremony. You can see Empress Fame disseminates the news of Shadwell's coronation, and Dryden describes Shadwell's path. Shadwell's path is lined up with fragments of pages from the books written by inferior poets like Haywood, Shirley, Ogilvy, etc., rather than Persian carpets, he says. And there were some useless writings of Shadwell piled up here and there. And you can also see the publishers who were ruined by publishing unsuccessful works by inferior poets serves as a bodyguard for Shadwell, and Shadwell's own publisher serves as the captain of these bodyguards. This throne itself was built by himself, and it was completed with the heap of his own books. And Shadwell sat right of Flecnoe. And Dryden says that his face was engraved with dullness and confusion. To keep the rule of dullness in his kingdom after his death, Shadwell was elected, and he has taken the vow. Shadwell has taken the vow that he will keep the rule of dullness in his kingdom until his death. Now, fifth major events was is anticipation of Shadwell's role. So before that, we can also see instead of ball and scepter, Shadwell held a large mug of a powerful ale in his left hand, symbolizing dullness, and his right hand he held his father's book, Love's Kingdom. We can also see that his crown is decorated with sleep inducing opium poppies. As ominous symbols, we can see a dozen owls were seen flying on Shadwell's left. So this says that this omen is considered as auspicious by Flecnoe, and Flecnoe thinks that uh, Shadwell could keep the ember of nonsense as ember of dullness. You can also see prophecy of Flecnoe about his son. Now, what was the prophecy of Flecnoe? Flecnoe says that his son Shadwell would rule the vast land. His son will write more nonsense than Love's kingdom. His son will continue to go in the path of new ignorance, following his path. And his characters will demonstrate that he has got a barren mind. That means, from Flecknoe's speech, we can assume that Flecknoe was damn sure that Shadwell begins his reign continuing the tradition of dullness and mediocrity in literature. Now, we can see Dryden was critiquing the poem's Shadwell's writing style and lack of originality, and highlighting the decline in literary standards under his rule. So, Shadwell need not work hard to create dullness because he simply need to express whatever is coming into his mind naturally, says Dryden. And it is also said that he should try to imitate the works of inferior or lesser poets. Now, Dryden comments on the plagiarism of Shadwell. Dryden says that Ben Jonson never copied anything from other writers. He never copied scenes from his contemporary writer like Fletcher, unlike Shadwell. Now, what about Shadwell? What Shadwell had copied is easily identifiable like oil floats on water, says Dryden about Shadwell's plagiarism. Now, Shadwell's mind was depicted as something that is directed towards some low quality, mean things. And Dryden also mocks at Shadwell's appearance. He says that you cannot compare him with Ben Jonson because of his pot belly. And his plays can put you in sleep. Its satires, he instead of satires, he could write only anagrams. And he also says that about Shadwell's poem, he can write acrostic poems only. So, about his plays, Dryden says that his plays can put you in sleep with tragic fate or comic scenes present in it. Whether he is writing, he is depicting some tragic fate of the hero or some comic scenes, surely both of them are capable of putting you in deep sleep, he says. Now, what about his satires? Dryden says that Shadwell wrote, instead of satires, Shadwell could write only anagrams. What are anagrams? Anagrams are those lines which are produced out of randomly chosen words. Now, these are anagrams are not the creation of some contemplative mind. What about Shadwell's poem? Shadwell can write acrostic poems only, says Dryden. Now we can move on to the final scene. Dryden concludes the poem with a scathing condemnation of Shadwell's work, lamenting the state of literature under his reign and asserting the superiority of Dryden's own poetic style. So, we can see which are the major events revolved around the final concluding scene. After coronation ceremony, you can see King Flecnoe falls down into a trapdoor set up for poet Flecnoe to fall through. So coronation ceremony has over. Flecnoe has selected his son, Mac Flecnoe, who is Mr. S.H. Dash or Shadwell himself, as the successor to his kingdom. Now he has King Flecnoe has no role in his kingdom, right? Because the coronation ceremony is over. So you can see a trapdoor is set for King Flecnoe, who is the father of Shadwell, in order to uh, make a fall. So, who set up the door for Flecnoe? The two characters in his play, Virtuoso, Bruce and Longbill. Now, Mac Flecnoe's, you can see this Flecnoe, King Flecnoe's, there is a reference to King Flecnoe's woolen robe. It was left behind and it was placed on younger poet Shadwell, who is the now Shadwell was coronated as king. So it was placed on the younger poet Shadwell, causing him to be twice as dull as his father Flecnoe. So you can see an allusion here. It alludes to Prophet Elijah and his disciple Elisha. So, who was the teacher? Teacher was Elijah. Elijah was a prophet and he was a teacher. When Elijah ascends to heaven, Elijah's mantle falls upon his student Elisha. And it is said that Elisha was twice blessed with the wisdom of his master Elijah. But when King Flecnoe had fallen through the trap hole, we can see that his woolen robe had fallen over Shadwell, and Shadwell was made twice dull than his father Flecnoe. So, this is how Dryden concludes his mock epic poem, Mac Flecnoe. So, thank you.